On a warm August afternoon in 1966, the sun cast its golden rays over Vintém Hill in Niterói, Rio de Janeiro. The hill, known for its lush greenery and panoramic views, was a favorite spot for locals seeking a respite from the bustling city below. Among them was 18-year-old Jorge da Costa Alves, who had ventured out to fly his kite, unaware that his leisurely activity would lead to the discovery of one of Brazil's most perplexing mysteries. It was the kind of day when the sunlight softened the chaos of life. The city of Niterói, Brazil, basked in the warmth of late August. It was 1966, and while the world swirled with Cold War anxieties and the space race dominated headlines, something quieter, stranger, was about to unfold on a hill just outside the city. Vintém Hill was not particularly remarkable. A patch of green clinging to the urban edge, it offered views of Guanabara Bay and the cityscape beyond. It was the sort of place where people went to walk, to fly kites, or to simply escape. That was what young Jorge da Costa Alves had in mind on the afternoon of August 20th. Just 18 years old, Jorge loved the outdoors. That day, with a breeze curling through the grass, he wandered up the hillside, kite in hand, seeking the perfect current of air. He was alone, the kind of alone that feels safe in daylight. But that would change quickly. At first, he noticed the smell, faint but off. Then the shapes, still and silent in the grass. Two bodies, lying side by side on the slope, partially obscured by the hill's scrubby vegetation. Jorge froze. These weren't sleeping figures or passed-out drunks. These were dead men. Their clothes were the first strange detail. Both wore suits, dark, formal, like they had just left a church or business meeting. Over the suits, they wore long, waterproof raincoats, even though the day was warm and dry. But what caught Jorge's eyes most were the masks. Both men had thick, metallic-looking masks resting over their faces, crudely fashioned from lead. Not like a carnival disguise or sunglasses, but more like welding goggles with the lenses removed and replaced with slabs of solid lead. Terrified, Jorge fled. He ran until he found help and returned with police. What unfolded over the next days, weeks, and even decades would grow into one of Brazil's most enduring and perplexing mysteries. The police arrived the following morning, August 21st. The terrain was too steep and difficult for immediate access the night before, and so they made the climb in full daylight. The two men were right where Jorge had found them, side by side on their backs, lead masks still in place. There were no signs of a struggle, no wounds, no visible trauma, no signs of violence or robbery, just two dead men dressed in suits, covered in raincoats, with masks shielding their eyes from what exactly? The investigation began with their identities. That part was relatively easy. They were carrying ID cards and personal belongings. The names were Miguel José Viana and Manoel Pereira de Cruz. Both were from Campos dos Goitacazes, a city about 175 miles to the northeast. They weren't from Niterói. They weren't tourists. They weren't known criminals. In fact, they were ordinary men. Electronics repairmen, both in their 30s, and reportedly close friends. But what were they doing here? The discovery around the bodies offered a few more clues and even more questions. Near the men, police found a small, empty plastic water bottle. Also nearby, two wet towels folded neatly, and most strangely, a small notebook with handwritten instructions in Portuguese. The note read, 1630 be at the specified location, 1830 ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals await signal mask. That was it. No explanation, no context, no signatures. Just a set of instructions, like a schedule for a secretive mission. As the news spread, the public reaction ranged from curiosity to panic. UFO sightings had recently been reported in the area. Strange lights in the sky, mysterious aircraft hovering above the hills, Some people thought the men had tried to contact aliens. Others believed it was a suicide pact. Still others insisted it was a murder, carefully staged to look otherwise. The police traced the men's movements. On August 17th, 3 days before the bodies were found, Miguel and Manoel had left their homes in Campos. They told family they were going to São Paulo to buy electronics supplies for their work, but they never reached São Paulo. Instead, they took a bus to Niterói. Witnesses in town later reported seeing them. At one point, they bought the raincoats. At another, they stopped at a small bar or restaurant. The waitress there remembered them well, mainly because one of them, Miguel, kept checking his watch nervously, as though on a strict timetable. They bought a bottle of water, probably the same one found near the bodies, and left. That was the last confirmed sighting of them alive. From that point on, the trail vanished. Whatever happened to Miguel and Manoel in the final hours of their lives remained a blank space in the timeline. The autopsy only deepened the mystery. Because the bodies had been exposed to the elements for several days, decomposition was advanced. The medical examiner could find no cause of death, no signs of violence, poisoning, or disease. There was no proper toxicology test at the time. The internal organs, already degraded, couldn't tell their story. It was as if the two men had simply stopped living. But people don't just die without a reason. Something had killed them, and everything around the scene hinted at intention. They had come here with a plan. They had worn raincoats, brought water, taken notes, folded towels, donned masks, waited for something. But what? As the weeks passed, theories multiplied. Some believed the men had attempted some kind of spiritual experiment. A friend of theirs came forward, stating that both Miguel and Manoel were interested in scientific spiritualism, a fringe blend of pseudoscience and mysticism popular among certain Brazilian circles at the time. It was rumored that they believed in contacting otherworldly beings, spirits perhaps, or aliens. Some even said they had built electronic devices for energy communication, combining radio parts with esoteric symbols. Maybe the men had tried to ascend to another realm. Other rumors were more grounded, but equally strange. Some speculated that they had taken psychedelics, perhaps LSD or another mind-altering substance, and died from the effects. That would explain the note's reference to capsules. Perhaps they thought they would receive visions or reach enlightenment. The masks would, in that case, protect them from the bright light they expected to see during the experience. But even that raised a troubling question. What capsule? No pills were found, no drug containers, no residue, no trace. Did they really take something, or had someone given it to them? And there was one more layer to the puzzle. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It turns out that not long before Miguel and Manoel were found dead on Vintém Hill, a remarkably similar case had occurred. In 1962, in a town called Neves, also in Brazil, a man was discovered deceased under highly unusual circumstances. He too had a lead mask. He too was believed to have been involved in a spiritualist group, but that case had never been fully investigated, and any link between the two was speculative at best. Still, the similarities were hard to ignore. Investigators dug deeper into Miguel and Manoel's background. They were known to be curious about the unknown, tinkerers not just in electronics, but in metaphysical matters. Friends told police they were fascinated by the possibility of contacting higher beings. They read books about energy fields, radiation, and psychic phenomena. They discussed time travel, spirit communication, and the hidden capabilities of the human mind. Some even believed the two men had joined an underground group of self-proclaimed scientists who were experimenting with altered states of consciousness. If this group existed, no one stepped forward to claim them. But then came the strange accounts. People who said they had seen flashing orange lights in the skies over Vintém Hill around the time of the men's deaths. Several witnesses described what they believed was a UFO hovering silently above the hill. Others claimed to have seen orbs of light darting between the trees. One man, a local resident who lived near the base of the hill, told reporters he saw the sky light up in strange colors that week. Not lightning, not fireworks, something else, something silent and glowing. He had never seen anything like it before or since. Suddenly, the masks made a strange kind of sense. If Miguel and Manoel expected to encounter something blinding, something radiant beyond human comprehension, lead shielding might have felt like a precaution. The raincoats could have been protection against heat or radiation. The towels might have been used to create a sterile space. It all had a ritualistic air, like they were preparing for contact. And yet, the reality was far more tragic. Whatever they hoped to achieve on that hillside, they never came back to tell their story. Their faces, hidden behind crude metallic masks, never got to witness the wonders they might have imagined. Other theories emerged, more grounded in human behavior than alien intervention. Some suspected suicide, but the scene didn't quite fit. There was no note to loved ones, no explanation. The men had plans to return home. They had bought return bus tickets, which were found in their pockets. That's not typical behavior for someone intent on ending their life. Could it have been an accidental overdose? Possibly. But again, no drugs were ever found. No containers, no paraphernalia. And both men were meticulous planners. It seemed unlikely that they would forget to bring something so essential or leave behind such a mess-free scene. Then there was the foul play theory. Some speculated that the men had been tricked, that someone had given them capsules laced with poison, that maybe they were part of a larger experiment conducted by someone else, someone watching from the shadows. One anonymous letter sent to a newspaper suggested that a third party had used the men as guinea pigs in an unlicensed experiment, but that lead went nowhere. The most bizarre speculation was that they had succeeded, that Miguel and Manoel had indeed made contact with something not of this world, that the capsules had altered their perception, lifted them from their bodies, and that the physical forms left behind were merely empty shells. That theory, of course, belonged to the fringes. But when all other explanations fail, the human mind often drifts toward the extraordinary. Weeks turned to months. The case stayed in the news. Amateur investigators began picking apart every detail. People examined the handwriting on the note, comparing it to known samples from the men. Others studied the materials of the masks, how they were made, and why. Some pointed out that making a lead mask is no easy feat. It takes effort, precision, and purpose. This wasn't a last-minute decision. It was part of a plan, whatever that plan might have been. The more closely the case was examined, the stranger it seemed. Why travel all the way from Campos dos Goitacazes to Niterói? Why lie to their families about their destination? Why wear suits, then layer them with raincoats on a warm day? Why bring only a single bottle of water to share between two men? Why fold the towels so neatly? Why no food, no watches, no weapons? It was as if the entire event was choreographed, every move rehearsed, every item selected for a specific role. And then it all fell apart. Investigators re-examined the waitress's account, the last person known to have seen them alive. She had noticed that Miguel, in particular, seemed nervous. He kept looking at his watch, as if waiting for something to happen. She said he appeared anxious, fidgety. When they bought the water, it was with deliberate intent, not casually, as if it was part of a checklist. She also recalled that they didn't speak much to each other. They were focused, quiet, and then nothing. To this day, no one has ever come forward with new information that could unlock the mystery. No family members had any hidden letters. No other members of a supposed spiritualist group stepped forward to explain the ritual. The masks, now preserved in evidence photos, are some of the only tangible remnants of their journey. As time passed, the story became legend. In Brazil, it's known as O Caso das Máscaras de Chumbo, the lead masks case. It has inspired books, television episodes, podcasts, and conspiracy forums. It's a story that lives on not because it offers answers, but because it refuses to give them. And behind every theory, every speculation, are two very real men, Miguel and Manoel, who left behind families, friends, and a haunting absence. They were curious, perhaps too curious, but they weren't fools. Whatever they believed, they pursued it with determination and faith. But what did they find in those final moments? A hallucination? A betrayal? A vision? Or silence? We may never know. The lead masks case could have faded quietly into the archives of unsolved mysteries, buried beneath bureaucracy and time. But something about the strangeness of it all, the masks, the cryptic note, the perfect lack of explanation, stuck with people. It was as though the entire event had been written with the logic of a dream and the choreography of a ritual, only to end in a silence that echoed louder than any answers. The deeper people looked, the more eerie coincidences they uncovered. Researchers pointed out that the 1960s in Brazil were a time of social upheaval and strange beliefs. While the country's politics grew increasingly volatile, with the military dictatorship soon to come, a parallel movement was growing in underground circles, one of spiritualism, occult science, and experimental philosophies. Miguel and Manoel were not alone in their interests. The town of Campos dos Goitacazes, where they lived and worked, was home to a number of amateur scientists and spiritualist hobbyists, the kind of people who built homemade radios not just to pick up news broadcasts, but to try to listen to frequencies of the beyond. Some took these hobbies further, merging electrical engineering with metaphysical theories. They believed that just as radios could receive unseen signals, the human mind could be tuned, enhanced, elevated to reach other realities. Some researchers later suggested that Miguel and Manoel were members of one such group. They were said to meet in secrecy, often conducting experiments using basic electronic equipment combined with religious or esoteric texts. They weren't drug users, as far as anyone could tell, but they were passionate about discovery. They wanted to know what was behind the veil of ordinary life. And then there was that note, always the note. 1630, be at the specified location. 1830, ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals await signal mask. It read like something from a spy novel or an occult manual. The phrase protect metals seemed odd. Was it an error in translation? Or did it literally mean to shield themselves? And what signal were they waiting for? Some thought it meant a literal signal, perhaps a flash of light, a radio frequency, a vibration. Others believed the signal was symbolic, the moment when the capsules would take effect and open their minds. Either way, the mask was the final step. To protect them, perhaps, to prepare them, or to help them see. The strange thing was, no drugs were ever found at the scene. No pill bottles, no syringes, no residue. It was as if the capsules, whatever they were, had vanished. If someone else had been with them on that hill, had that person taken the drugs away? Or had the men simply consumed them earlier, leaving no trace? Some forensic experts argued that certain psychedelic substances could indeed leave behind little to no residue after several days of decomposition. LSD, for instance, is powerful in microscopic amounts and may not be detectable after a body has been left in the elements for days. But even then, it was speculation. And speculation, it seemed, was all anyone had. A peculiar detail also came to light during the investigation. The lead masks weren't found on the men's faces, but slightly askew, placed as if removed and repositioned, or never worn tightly. They had no straps, just solid slabs of lead, shaped to curve around the face, with no clear way to stay in place. This baffled experts. If the masks were intended to protect the eyes from a blinding light, why weren't they secured? Why weren't there elastic bands or ties? Did the men simply place them over their eyes and lie down? Or did they expect to only need them momentarily, perhaps during a specific moment they believed would come? One chilling theory suggested they had been told to lie down, put on the masks, and wait, and that whoever gave them those instructions never intended for them to get back up. But if there was a third person, someone orchestrating this from the shadows, who were they? What did they gain? It didn't help that years later, a man named Hamilton Bazzani claimed in a drunken confession that he had been involved in the deaths. He told a newspaper that he and some others had given the men capsules laced with poison and robbed them. But police found no evidence. His story changed each time he told it, and no stolen items were ever reported. Miguel and Manoel still had their money, ID cards, and watches when they were found. The confession was dismissed, but it lingered, like a faint echo. There were also whispers about the man in the Jeep. Locals said a stranger had been seen near Vintém Hill in the days leading up to the discovery. A foreign-looking man, tall, pale, driving a Jeep, asking questions about isolated spots in the hills. He was never identified. Some speculated he was a member of a secret society, a rogue scientist, or even a CIA operative conducting LSD experiments. After all, the 1960s were the height of covert mind control research. Then again, he may not have existed at all. The case stirred up fear, curiosity, and an almost mythic fascination. It had the elements of folklore, secret rituals, mysterious lights, unknown chemicals, and death under unexplained circumstances. It became something more than a police file. It became a ghost story. One detail that especially gripped the public was the symmetry of the deaths. The men lay side by side, arms by their sides, as though carefully arranged. There was no sign of struggle, no scratches, bruises, or torn clothing. If they had died from fear or convulsions, there would have been signs, but there were none. It was as if they had simply drifted away. Even the location was strange. Vintém Hill wasn't far from town, but it was isolated enough that no one saw them climb it. No one heard them. No one reported shouting or music or lights that night. Whatever happened, it happened in eerie silence. Then there were the towels, such an ordinary domestic object, folded neatly beside them. Why bring towels on a spiritual journey? Some believed the towels were used to clean their faces after vomiting, if the capsules induced sickness. Others thought the towels were meant to lie on, or to act as some symbolic form of purity, but no explanation ever fully satisfied the question. And then came the rumors of another case, a second lesser-known incident from around the same time, involving yet another man with connections to lead masks. That case was never solved either. Could this have been a pattern? Were there others? Investigators began to think they were missing something critical. A person, a book, a tape, something that explained what Miguel and Manoel believed, but nothing emerged. By the early 1970s, the case went cold. The lead masks were locked away. The case files grew dusty. Journalists moved on to new stories, but the hill remained. Vintém Hill today is different. The city has grown. Roads now reach where dirt paths once were. But people still talk about what happened there. Locals sometimes visit the site, though many stay away after dark. It has a reputation now, a strange energy, they say, a place of unfinished business. Each year, amateur sleuths and mystery seekers from around the world dig into the lead mask's case. They analyze the photos, the note, the timeline. They retranslate the instructions. They create 3D models of the masks. They explore every theory, from alien contact to esoteric suicide, from government experiments to initiation rituals gone wrong. But no theory, no matter how elaborate, has ever explained everything. Some say the case will never be solved, that it exists in a space just beyond our reach, like the very mysteries Miguel and Manoel may have sought. That maybe the answers lie not in science or logic, but in belief and the powerful, dangerous pull of curiosity. They were seekers, after all. And sometimes, when you seek too far into the unknown answers back. Years later, some would say that the most terrifying thing about the lead mask's case wasn't the masks themselves or the possibility of mind-altering experiments. It was that two ordinary men disappeared into the folds of an extraordinary mystery, and that the world simply kept turning. Miguel and Manoel weren't criminals, cultists, or deranged thrill seekers. They were technicians, bright, practical men with families, day jobs, and responsibilities. And yet something tugged at them, something powerful enough to convince them to lie to their families, purchase strange items, climb a remote hill, and wait for a signal that may never have come. What kind of belief does that take? Some experts tried to rationalize it. They proposed the theory that Miguel and Manoel had stumbled into a belief system that combined pseudoscience with mysticism. One expert described it as scientific spiritualism, a fusion of electrical engineering, radio communication, and metaphysical exploration. This wasn't uncommon in the post-war decades. All over the world, men who had once worked on radios, radar, or even weapon systems began experimenting on their own, trying to find what lay beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. Some believed that energy, electricity, and consciousness were deeply connected, that by tapping into the right frequency, you could not only speak across oceans, but across dimensions. Books like The Morning of the Magicians and the Occult Reich fed the imagination of curious minds in that era. Secret societies, mind control, the mystery of ancient knowledge, all were popular themes. In Brazil, as in many countries, these ideas found a foothold in amateur science circles and spiritualist groups. Maybe Miguel and Manoel thought they had decoded something. Maybe they believed they were on the verge of a cosmic breakthrough, something that would prove life beyond the visible, the ordinary, something that would change everything. Or maybe, just maybe, they were led astray. Because for all their precision and planning, the facts remain chillingly simple. Two men climbed a hill. They brought no survival gear, no means of contacting anyone. They lay down, placed lead masks over their eyes, and never got up again. And the world was left with questions. Years after the case went cold, another twist would emerge, quietly and almost forgotten. In the 1990s, a private investigator named Vincent Acosta reopened the files out of personal interest. He'd grown up hearing the story, and like many others, couldn't let it go. During his research, he found that one of the original investigators had privately noted a theory that was never made public. According to this theory, Miguel and Manoel may have been instructed by someone they trusted, perhaps a mentor or the leader of a group. There were rumors of a man they referred to only as Professor. No last name, no address, just stories about someone older, deeply involved in spiritual experimentation, who had supposedly taught them techniques to communicate with higher beings. This professor, if he existed, was never found. But if he had convinced them that a particular combination of steps, a location, a time, a capsule, a signal, would open a gateway to enlightenment or another dimension, it would explain a lot. It would explain their meticulous planning. It would explain why they left their homes, traveled over 160 kilometers, and waited. It might even explain why they died without fear. Because what if they believed they weren't going to die at all? What if they thought they were leaving, ascending, transitioning into something greater? This is the heartbreaking core of the lead mask's case. Not just the mystery of how they died, but the mystery of what they hope to find. If you believe the stories, the lights in the sky, the whisper of UFOs, the strange man in the Jeep, the third mask, then maybe it's a case of contact gone wrong. If you follow the spiritualist trail, the tales of self-taught scientists blending technology with religion, then maybe it was a tragic experiment. Two men trying to touch the infinite with nothing but willpower and blind trust. And if you strip it all away, remove the conspiracy, the aliens, the esoteric codes, then you're left with something quieter, but no less haunting. The idea that we all seek meaning, that some people, for all their intelligence and promise, can become so consumed by belief, by the need for something more, that they walk straight into the unknown, unblinking. What happened to Miguel and Manoel is unique in its details, but at its heart, it reflects something deeply human, the need to know, the need to reach. The masks, they've become symbols now, images on internet forums, headlines in faded newspapers, but they were real, heavy, cold, handcrafted by hands that expected to wear them in the moment of revelation. Instead, they became relics of a mystery that refuses to let go. Today, Vintém Hill is quiet. The city buzzes around it, cars pass nearby, buildings rise and fall. But up on the hill, among the tangled grass and silent trees, the air feels different. Not spooky, not evil, just paused, as though time itself remembers what happened there and waits for someone to finally make sense of it. Some say the answers are buried in classified files. Others believe they lie in long-lost books or forgotten members of a secret group who have taken a vow of silence. But most believe we'll never know. Maybe that's why we tell these stories, because mystery invites imagination. And in imagining, we feel closer to understanding, even if just for a moment. So, wherever you land, whether you believe in the possibility of life beyond our world, or the quiet tragedy of two men misled by their own yearning, this case stands as a powerful reminder of the fine line between genius and obsession, between bravery and recklessness, between science and belief. Miguel José Viana and Manoel Pereira de Cruz remain names etched into the annals of unexplained history. Not because of what they did, but because of what they left behind. Two bodies, two lead masks, and an endless list of questions. And perhaps that's the most haunting thing of all, because sometimes the signal never comes, and the masks stay on. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time, stay curious.